Yeah.
Yeah, so
shall we start?
Yeah, do you want to pull it out and then we can both listen and we'll put that back in.
Okay, welcome to this NCCC meeting in June. My name is Jochen Zeil. I'm the reluctant chair of NCCC at the moment. And I gather we have two guest presentations, one about demonstration housing project, the more general setup. And I'm really interested to see Tony Trope because I'm captive reader of his comments in the Canberra Times. And I always wanted to suggest that we invite him to talk to us about proper architecture in Canberra. And the second is a more specific project of demonstration housing in O'Connor. Could I ask the demonstration housing project team to start their presentation? Thank you very much.
Of course, thank you very much. My name's Lee Dury. I'm the Executive Branch Manager in Development and Implementation in EPSDD, and our team has been undertaking the demonstration housing project for a few years now. I did come and present to you a couple of years ago pre-COVID, and I think some of the people that are in this meeting were at that one. But I've got some new information and some new things to update. The first thing I want to do is share a video. So I'm going to share my screen. I'm not very familiar with Zoom, so forgive me if I muck this up a little bit, but I think I'll be all right. So I'm just going to play you a little video to begin with. It's quite short. And then I'll just run through some presentation information.
Canberra is a growing and evolving city, and that places some challenges on our sustainability. You can easily buy a family home or an apartment, but there is a missing middle in the market. In 2017, the ACT government called for expressions of interest in the demonstration housing project, and we're really pleased to see the range and the inventiveness in their responses. The demonstration housing project gives us the opportunity to test and develop new housing technologies that the community of Canberra may want. A fundamental characteristic will include how the buildings are integrated into the suburban context, how they relate to the neighbours, but very much how they respond to sustainability in their own footprint. It's important to do this because currently we're not able to deliver these types of housing under the existing terms and plan. This project proposes to explore different ways of living in your home for longer, so multi-generational housing, the ability to age in place, or for instance, other options like co-housing. The demonstration housing project gives us an opportunity to test and learn from good examples, and if they're successful over time, we'll be able to deliver them elsewhere in Canberra.
So now I'm going to just share my presentation. And I think I've got that working. So I'm just going to skip through that first slide with just a link to the video. So really what we're talking about with demonstration housing, and the reason, I guess it's the why of demonstration housing, is that 50% of Canberrans want to age in place and can continue living in their current communities as they age. And they want to do it in a more appropriate housing than what they might have now. So what it is, it's important for government to be proactive in responding to population shifts and to provide housing that suits the needs of a range of different people for different stages of their life and different mobilities. So it can be things like universal designed housing places for downsizers, housing suitable for ageing in place, and more affordable housing choices as well. So these demographic shifts give an opportunity for government to start to rethink how we do respond to housing in new and different ways, whilst also responding to other goals such as climate change, adaptation, active travel, and meeting the objective of government to limit urban sprawl by moving towards a 70% development in infill areas and only 30% in greenfields. So demonstration housing proponents are rethinking how housing's designed and delivered beyond your typical single residential building or your apartment block. And the projects that have come forward are really meeting the needs of a range of different users at different stages of their life. And when Tony and Dan talk about their particular proposal, it would be really good to understand how that really is relevant to theirs. So the demonstration housing project came out of a 2017 Legislative Assembly direction, which asked us to consider different types of housing against the criteria that you see there on the left. And it's things like design excellence, but it's also about more sustainable development and developing that missing middle. We're really looking at how people might engage with the community and how they might look at public and affordable housing. And the intention of demonstration housing wasn't that all projects addressed every one of these criteria, but it was that they could address some of these criteria. And also what happened was at the same time there was the collaboration hub, so the community collaboration hub looking at housing choices, and we asked them to consider what other things demonstration housing needed to be looking at. And they asked that it considered affordable housing, really looked at ageing in place and universal design, and it looked at maximising green space and maintaining the garden city. So the key features of the demonstration housing project, it's not like other projects that might have been done that are more about it being a design competition. It's really focused on the delivery and the how of making these ideas a reality, but also including good design. And it's about how there can be partnerships between community and industry. So what government did is we put out an expression of interest, and I'll run through that process a little bit, but we basically put it out to the community, industry, architects to say, have you got a really good idea that you can't currently do under the territory plan, or there's other obstacles in place that stop you doing it, that you think gives us a different type of housing? Bring forward your ideas and we will work with you to see if we can implement them. So the project started with 2 streams. So there's the with side of stream. So we had proponents come to us who already had a block of land that they really wanted to do something with and had been thinking about doing something with for some time. And then we also said, if you've got a really good idea, but you don't have a site, we will help try and find a suitable site to deliver your project if it gets through the process. So we received in all 27 proposals, and 19 of those progressed to the second stage of the process. Since then, we've had a few proponents withdraw for a number of reasons. You know, perhaps their circumstances changed, or the length of the time of the process may not have suited their needs, or various other reasons. So we currently are progressing with 6 with a site proposals, and we have 4 without a site proposal that are still going through the process. And we've identified sites for each of those. So an invitation to submit a stage 2 request for tender is occurring for each of the without a site proponents separately, and they're really tailor-made to each of their proposals. And that's done once we've done all the site investigations for the particular site we've identified for them. The stage 2 of each project really involves developing a much more detailed plans and a detailed response to the evaluation criteria, such as their design, their sustainability, how they're going to deliver on build quality, and how they're going to engage with the community. So the evaluation panel that we put together for these was made up of myself, the government architect, and then other senior government people with expertise in development feasibility, build quality, and finance. So each of the projects, once they've got through stage 2, request for tender, request for proposal, then present their project to the National Capital Design Review Panel. And some of them have gone back a couple of times and talked to the panel. And then we work with them to develop a community engagement strategy, and they do engagement within their local community, which is part of the reason why we're here today, before we progress to a site-specific territory plan variation. So most projects require a territory plan variation to be able to deliver, which is one of the premises of the project to begin with. Once the territory plan variation is approved, or assuming it's approved, development application will then progress, and then the project will be delivered, and we have a post occupancy evaluation process. So the projects that are being that have got through, and the ones that are my cursor, the ones that are highlighted in red here are the ones that are within the inner north. So you saw the Stellulata, which is the co-housing development in Ainslie. You saw that a couple of years back. They've just got through their engagement for territory plan variation, and that's been out on public notification. Now it's under consideration. We'll go forward to the minister. Echo, you saw very recently. So they're doing their community housing provider, working in partnership with Housing ACT to deliver affordable housing in Lyneham. We've got In Loco, which we'll talk about soon. The two projects without a site, which you haven't seen yet, is the co-housing Canberra, which I know a number of you are aware of, and they're looking at a site as part of Section 76 in Watson. And they helped us with some community engagement we did on planning for Section 76 recently. And the other is the old Lyneham depot site on Wattle Street, and we're looking at a project there, and the request for tender for the second stage will go out to that proponent in the next few weeks. So here's some lovely shots of some of the projects. So the Stellulata one, obviously you're familiar with, and the Echo is the one that's in Lyneham. We have one of the In Locos that's in Forest, and one that's in O'Connor, and the O'Connor one we'll be talking about. There's also the Manor House, which is over at Griffith, and then a multi-generational home over at Weston. So these are the 6 that are progressing with the site. So for the project status of each of these ones with the site, they've all been through the National Capital Design Review Panel. There's 3 that are sort of going through the community engagement process at the moment. Then we have Echo about to commence their territory plan process. Manor House and Stellulata have been through the public notification stage of their territory plan variation, and obviously a territory plan variation process takes quite some time, and if it gets referred to committee, can take up to 18 months. So they're working through that process at the moment. And I think I'm going to open it for questions if anybody has any questions on that now, or if you want to wait until after Tony and Dan's presentation. But there's further information on demonstration housing project available here too.
Thanks heaps, Leah. Are there any questions?
Maybe it's Jeff. Maybe we could look at what we've done before with the old semi-detached 2-storey houses that were built across Canberra. Some were reverse images, so they moved them around a bit, but it was all done in high production because we're using the same profiles, sizes and whatever, and production construction, good, lots of buildings built. That was done under the old federal government, I guess.
So the duplexes that you see around the inner north.
Sorry? Yeah, the inner north, yes.
That you see around the inner north are a really good model.
They were constructed well, but that's another issue. But
yeah.
They were very practical and usable. Okay.
The sorts of projects that we've seen coming forward, some of them are a bit similar to that. Others are more of that co-housing model, which really you can't do under the current rules. And then others have really looked to increase density on a block to increase affordability, such as Echo, or looked at how you might develop a project that has shared facilities, which is a bit like co-housing, but not necessarily the same.
Leah, the whole setup is very commendable. And so we look at it with great interest.
Yeah.
The problem I have is that as you are trying to do that, what we see in the suburbs is basically an incredible extension of Mac mansions, and not only in fluffy sites. So the problem we have is that what we call compliance management problems. So even the current, what we think, or I think, inadequate standards for sustainable, ecological, and energy efficient housing are not being implemented. Now, in parallel, we have a government program like yours, which I would fully support in any direction you outlined. This is our problem. We see in the moment that there are in parallel sensible strategies that are not being implemented, sensible strategies like yours to show and showcase solutions for urgent problems. But it seems with the 5 or 4 projects you're actually getting through, we are not covering the space that's currently being destroyed by inadequate compliance management.
So with these projects, the intention is that they enable us to test some ideas that we can allow more broadly. So eventually it's not just the 6 projects, it becomes a model that can be implemented across the territory. So what we're really wanting to test is those ideas of what's replicable and what can be done elsewhere to try and get these kind of outcomes across the territory.
Sure, as I said, that's commendable. But the reality on the ground is in a way completely working against what you are trying to do.
Yeah, I think we all want
by the same government.
Yeah. I think we recognise that sometimes we want some better housing outcomes and we need to find ways to do it.
Lee, it's Ian Hubbard here. I was just wondering how you, I agree with Joachim. I think most of the demonstration projects, have some really great objectives and are pretty innovative. How are you managing some of the reaction, particularly against, say, Manor House, that this will enable greater density in, say, RZ1 areas of the inner north by stealth? So you've got, like, Manor House, when you look at the fantastic renderings, they look like a lot of the developments that are going up in O'Connor and Turner and things like that. I'm sure that, I was just wondering how you're going to manage that perception that this will, if it gets the tick, just enable wholesale building of that sort of 2-storey style housing that seems to be going up on a lot of blocks in O'Connor and Turner.
So something like the Manor House, as you suggested, it's a development that takes what's allowable for a single residential build and it was actually a slightly smaller, but within that footprint gives you 4 dwellings and retains that amount of landscape. And that's the model that they were really trying to test for that proposal. I guess the idea of demonstration housing is that we have those 6 with site and 4 with outside proposals going forward that really allow us to look at, is there something from this that we really want to be able to take forward, given that we do need to be able to house people, and that that the breadth of RZ1 probably has some capacity to look at how you might do some different things in that space. But having said that, it's not about wholesale broad application of these. It's really about, well, if this is a model such as the cellular co-housing, where's it appropriate? Where does it work? Where doesn't it work? If you were going to do it, would you allow it only in certain locations, on certain aspects, on certain size blocks, in close to different facilities? Things like that are what we really want to try and understand. So for these projects to be implemented more broadly would be a change to the planning rules more broadly, which would go through its own consultation process anyway. So it's not an automatic update to the planning territory plan more broadly for each of these tests. Now I do have a question in the chat from Angela. And it's about the 70-30 split with infill and greenfields. It's part of the ACT planning strategy, and the intention is to limit urban sprawl by concentrating 70% of development within the existing urban footprint and looking at ways. So the planning strategy looks at urban intensification zones and where that might happen and where zoning might be changed. And I guess in the inner north has probably seen the most significant part of that in the developments along Northbourne and the increased housing along there. So it's a strategy that government's applying for planning across the city.
Yeah, but again, like in North Watson, do you actually have any projects that are inside the current large-scale developments like in North Watson or along Northbourne? I don't see any examples of any sustainable architecture in these sites.
So we have one so the co-housing Canberra is looking at the site that we've found for them is in North Watson as part of Section 76.
Okay, that's a new one.
Yeah, that's the new one.
But there's a current development along Antle Street that is, like as if nothing had changed.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question of Lee?
Gordon?
I can hear a question, but I can't.
Yeah, Gordon.
Sorry, it's Gordon here.
Hi, Gordon.
Remember me? I was
I
involved.
can only just hear you.
Sorry, I'm not sure what the problem is. Yeah, I was involved with co-housing Canberra in the early stages, and I'm one of those people who got out of the process because it was just taking way too long, and we had to move on with deciding our own sort of housing situation. But I guess that's my concern, is that, as you say, this project started back in sort of 2017, and I can remember going to meetings about it. You know, we're talking about 4 years ago. We've, as you say, with the process, it's dragging on so long that I doubt if the first projects will even be built and occupied by, 2023 or something. And in the meantime, we're seeing, lots of development happening across the inner north that as Joachim was saying, unsustainable in a whole range of ways. And I just wonder what this project is actually contributing to the broader strategic planning of Canberra, because there's supposed to be a strategic planning review going on at the moment, which in theory should be informed by this sort of work to look at, well, how do we change the territory plan so it is providing greater housing diversity, more sustainable housing. But that process, seems to be going on, independently of this demonstration housing project. So how is demonstration housing actually going to influence that strategic planning review?
So I can respond to that. We're working very closely with our colleagues that are working on the strategic planning review. And we even have some of our team embedded in that team and being able to, I guess, we've also had people working on that are involved in our project group for demonstration housing, so that we're able to, the beauty of demonstration housing is it allows you to test some of those ideas that from a sort of higher level planning perspective might seem like a good idea or might seem difficult to achieve. And with the demonstration housing, we're able to, I guess, have concrete examples that have, while they haven't been built yet, they've actually worked through so many different issues that all the key learnings, I guess, have come, well, not all of them, but a lot of the key learnings have come from the process to date that can feed into that process, like what sort of planning changes are needed to be able to, or to consider to be able to make this possible. But, there's always scope for further planning changes as we test these on the ground.
Okay, folks, thanks heaps, Leah. Just in the interest of time, we now need to move to the presentation of a specific project, the In Loco project in O'Connor. Tony, are you going to present this? Okay. Thanks, Leah.
Hear me?
We can hear you.
Oh, that's good. So we've come up with a little workaround. So Dan's going to try and log in so we can get the sound at the moment through his login, and then we can speak through this one. So that might, what's that? I don't know. Oh, it's not going to work. Okay, sorry. Okay, well, look, what we might do is just do a tag team thing. So we probably are not going to be able to hear what you say initially, and then we'll do a quick presentation, and then we can try and work out some sort of tag team where we answer questions. So perhaps just nod if that makes sense.
It's okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah,
it's just me talking. Yeah. I can hear and speak, but Dan's sort of out of the picture at the moment. So
he's in the picture.
He's in the picture, but he's very chatty. So what we might, oh, hang on, I've got to do this other thing first. Again, I'm not a whiz on this. To share screen. So I'm just going to share the screen, which one's this, Dan? That one, okay. Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Page one, okay, we just, sorry, go back to the beginning. Okay, so full screen, okay. There we go. All right, so we don't need that one. That's the address, the Fairfax thing. So, okay, I'm going to get Dan's put this together. So I'm sort of winging it a bit here on the bits we're going to talk about. So this is basically going to be the flyer, isn't it, Dan? So it's a render of the flyer, an early idea of the concept of the project. I'm going to what I might start with, if that's all right, is just to do a video. We've done a little fly around video to give everybody a bit of an idea of the sort of the architectural site context of and what the houses look like. So you can see the scale and size and the intent, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the detail later on. So we're going to go here, and then we're going to go. Is that shared? Can you see an image now?
No.
Oh, okay.
Oh.
I just do that. I thought that might be sharing it, mightn't it? Sorry. How do I share this, Dan? All right. Sorry. Where is it? That one. Next one. Okay. Oh, okay. Right. Got it. Sorry. Does that? Can you see an image now?
Yes.
Okay. So we're just going to play that. So.
I like the ocean in the background.
Well, we're moving. Yes, that's the that's Lake Burley Griffin in a very flood-prone day, I think. So 3 dwellings here. We've got the main emphasis. This is not radical in terms of the agenda of this project. It really looks at. I mean, everybody's talking about urban density. What we have in Canberra is this, as Lee referred to, as this missing middle. Just talking about my sort of personal connection to this whole agenda is that when I was president of the institute, that we had we got a competition, national competition going to look at the missing middle. So it seemed to be a problem for Canberra, where we're bumping into our boundaries. We're virtually the most spread out city in the world, and we have to look at how we can do the infill properly. And since 2003, basically all of the RZ1 areas have been completely sterilized. And I think people have come to recognize that, you know, now if you go to Denman, for instance, a large block is anything that's over 500 square meters. People are sitting on blocks that are, you know, 700, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 square meters. And the only option they have for doing anything with them is to build a McMansion, which I think was referred to by Ian earlier on as something we don't really want to see. So what our proposal is that there may be some options to look at some joint venture proposals where people can age in place and do something to develop blocks that currently are only available for people who want to build large houses. So I guess, you know, this is the core issue. That's it really for, let me just go back to shares. Is that a new share? Okay, and then go back to the presentation, sorry. Okay, so do you want to do this bit now?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, I might hand over to Dan so he can talk for a while, and then we'll just do a bit of tag teaming.
Hello all. So just to introduce myself, my name's Dan. I'm a builder, but also it is my in-laws site that we've chosen for O'Connor. So the idea came around initially for them that the house is in quite dire need of updating, mainly from a winter heating point of view. The house is very cold. My in-laws are obviously both retired now. They're not got an income, so knocking down the house is kind of financially not achievable. The house is too big for them as empty nesters, but they're quite tied to the neighbourhood, having lived there for over 30 years, worked at the ANU, had both kids go through Turner Primary. They have a strong connection to the community. So kind of got to this conundrum of what to do. Lots of talks around the dinner table about that. And then the demo housing came up. I work with Tony a lot on single dwellings, architectural single dwellings. So he put this forward as an idea that might be suitable, and that's kind of where it took off from there. So talking about our project as well in the context of what I just mentioned, it's as much a social model as a built one. You know, obviously we understand the need for density and the agenda to do that in infill rather than greenfield sites. But I think the big difference for our model is when the developer is the owner, when the developer is someone who has a vested interest in their neighborhood, when the developer is someone that's been in that neighborhood for many years, and they want to move forward, they're going to do something a lot more sensitively than someone who's just doing it for pure financial gain. And the reason why, I guess, they have to go towards this model for downsizing, it's not just the pure size of the house, it's the ability to be able to split the block to get the finances to be able to do this. This is why they become a developer. So they get a more sustainable new house that's lower maintenance, is adaptable, is accessible, can help them age in place through things that are like this project in particular is reaching the gold standard for adaptation. So that means it's got flush thresholds. It means it's got an accessible toilet on the ground floor. It means it's got hobless showers. It's got 1 meter walkways upstairs, can accommodate a lift. Things like that have been considered. So the agenda is that social model. And the big thing for our model also is this missing middle, which Leah talked about and is kind of a big agenda for this demonstration housing project. My in-laws were absolutely adamant they weren't going to move to an apartment. They didn't want an apartment. They don't like the idea of it. They also were heavily scared off by media and, well, it's real world problems with a lot of apartments. It's not just a media beat up, it's real. So they just didn't foresee that in their future. So the other option was a knockdown rebuild, and then you just end up with the same size house that they don't need, and the amount of financial investment to achieve that was out of their reach. So, I mean, this missing middle, Ian mentioned about what will this demonstrate when you see that there's a lot of development. I mean, our development, while we might think it's beautiful, it might look to some other people that it's just another apartment going up or another development going up in their suburb. Well, it's not, because when you look, there are no townhouses available for sale. It's apartments or freestanding houses. There's nothing with a small backyard where someone can have a dog. There's nothing with a ground floor access to a bathroom and living quarters. It's not done by developers because it's not financially viable. They want to maximize the amount of yield they can get on a block, and 3 nice townhouses doesn't do that when they could fit 16 on their small 1 bedrooms. So this is why you don't see this kind of housing typology. And then further exacerbating that is when you only have blocks that are zoned to do that, no one is going to take a block that can zone to do 16 dwellings and do 3. They're going to do 16. So demonstrating that we're doing this on an RZ1 with a lot of strict caveats around it is showing a different type of housing choice. And then furthermore, I think this demonstration housing project will be best practice. You know, there's been a lot of, as Gordon mentioned, we've been in this for a long time and we have jumped through a lot of hoops, rightly so. But, you know, governments are a behemoth. They're slow moving. And there's been a lot of emphasis placed on designing the buildings to a very high standard and ensuring that they'll be constructed to a very high standard, which is something that is definitely missing from a lot of construction. And it's not an ACT problem, it's a nationwide problem, that we're hoping that this project can show best practice, and best practice extends to making sure the houses are future-proof, making sure the houses are highly sustainable, best practice for adhering to garden city principles. And I think that last line is that it's not maximum dollars for developers, this project. So there's a little blurb from Minister Gentleman, and it just kind of re-emphasizes that, you know, for example, an older person or couple in a large family home may wish to downsize to a smaller house. A young person may be looking for an affordable apartment, or a young couple looking to get started in the housing market might want to try a townhouse. So that's right in line with what we're trying to do here. So this is the site. Hopefully this will provide a little bit of context for some other people that might not be familiar. So you've got Fairfax Street, which is basically, it's MacArthur Avenue. It just changes to Fairfax Street there. And you can see our site is a large corner block. It's nearly 1,200 square meters. And it's facing, we're quite fortuitous here because the impact to other residents in the street, there's only one more driveway at the end of our street. So, and there's no neighbors across the road. So it's kind of a bit of a tick box in using this one as an example of okay, well, if we're going to do one and see the impacts, this one is going to have as minimal impacts as we think to surrounding neighbours. This is the site, a bit of a zoomed in version, and you can see there the last driveway. I've done direct, I used to live here with my in-laws. We had to move out. I would have loved to have stayed in the inner north, but it wasn't a financial option for us. But we've engaged with all our neighbours since this project was a whisper, and we've had the feedback from all the neighbours at this stage has been positive. I think that comes down to the density, in proving that we are not going over the RZ1 50% plot ratio, that someone could just come in and buy this house if we sold it, bulldoze it and put a mansion if you like. So this is the street view. As you can see, this is winter. The house is pretty much in shade all day from these macrocarpers. They're not deciduous. So we're looking to address some of those things. This is north facing. So the house just doesn't perform to a standard that is going to be suitable moving forward for their age, and not really suitable moving forward with energy use and consumption, and dragging this house up to date. It's very tenuous whether that's viable. So I think I wanted to show you this first, even before the floor plan. So this is the proposed landscaping scheme. You can see there in the middle, tree 10 is an Angophora tree that's on site that we've worked really hard to plan the residents around. We want to keep that tree. It's not a street tree. We want to keep that tree because you can't get those things back, you know, once that goes. A lot of the other trees are at the end of their life. There's radiator pines, there's macrocarpers. They're not consistent with native plantings. They're not, those type of trees aren't promoting bees. They're not helping native birds. So the Angophora it's quite a standout tree. It's not very common in ACT. It's more of a coastal species, and it's done really well. Having lived there, it promotes a lot of bird life. So we've designed the residents around that. And as I think that's a good example to show the density that we've got on the block. The residences are quite modest. They're 3 bedrooms. And it kind of shows the density of planting that we want to have. It shows the green roofs on the carport, that we've really paid careful attention to reducing the heat island effect. That's been quite a big focus for us, and paying careful attention to native landscaping and a good landscaping scheme that will really subdue the residents, even though they're new, quite quickly. So this is the floor plan. This is the ground floor plans. I know that there's a lot of detail there and they're not very zoomed in, so a lot of people might struggle to see a lot of detail there. Yeah, I mean, you can see to the front there, the little guidance on the left up there shows where north is. So you've got north facing living areas. We haven't gone through extensive modelling yet, but there's no reason that these won't achieve over 7 stars on early modelling, maybe even higher. And we will be aiming for higher. And you know, removing those front trees and having a true north frontage to living areas and things like that is going to be just such an much more habitable space than the existing house they're in. So this is the view from Hemnant Street. Obviously, we're on a corner. So we've done a lot of work here. You can see with courtyard walls and screening to provide articulation. You know, Tony will talk more to this, but instead of having these flat facade boxes that I think are quite confronting to a lot of people, we've worked quite hard to reduce the form. And me as the builder, and also I'm hoping to move into one myself, and that's, you know, a further tick in the box for intergenerational living. They will be built to a very high standard. I'm hoping personally that these can be taken to awards, not just used as demonstration housing to prove that scheme successful, but to show that what best practice for sustainability and also build quality means in this kind of realm, because I think, yeah, in high density urban living, it's not a stellar part of the built quality of our builders around town. This is from the bottom corner looking up at unit 3, which is a standalone unit, and it's still on 450 square meters. So there's still a good sized backyard. It's basically a standalone house in a new suburb. And it still is under that 50% plot ratio that would apply to the block anyway, even as a standalone residence. This is just a quick little glimpse into, these are the houses that Tony and I have built in collaboration. Some of you may recognize some of them. They've all won awards. Some have won a national award. So yeah, I hope that I can bring this, I definitely will be bringing this level of finish to these townhouses. But I guess it's just there to show that we've got a track record of producing and doing collaborative projects and producing results. And then I guess this is just a little blurb on, we kind of are very committed to community consultation, which is part of the agenda anyway. And I just hope it comes across as a positive addition to the neighbourhood. I mean, I don't aim to please everyone, and I don't think you ever can, but I hope that on balance, most people can see that it's a considered project that we think will not detract from the neighbourhood and provide my in-laws, Carol and Wilfred, a much better quality of life moving forward. We are currently working on a website that'll have all this information, and we are in the process of setting up on-site drop-in sessions, like a barbecue on site, maybe on a Saturday or something like that, and pop-up events at O'Connor shops. But we're still working through that with the demonstration housing team and what COVID rules and all these things apply. So yeah, we're moving forward on that. But yeah, thank you for listening to me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Dan.
Yeah.
Any questions? Dan, maybe for the moment, stop sharing.
Yes, we will. Yeah,
okay.
Thanks.
Okay.
I have one, Joachim.
Marianne.
I guess I'm interested in knowing how the title works. How does the nitty-gritty financial side of it works in terms of, is this one block now divided in 3? How do you administer the, I know it's not Torrens titled in the ACT, it's leasehold, but how do you work all that out? Sorry for my ignorance, but I'm very puzzled.
Just a quick, before I'll get Dan to answer that question, because I guess there's 2 parts of the personal in this. Is Dan's, it's very much a personal connection with him. We've had a very strong professional connection, but this is very personal project for him. He also has some architectural, he's studied as a builder, he studied architecture and got a degree in that. So he's got a very keen eye for detail, adds a lot of value. But my personal connection is probably more the philosophical one. I've been sort of banging away at this urban density issue for probably nearly a decade now, and the NEAT housing competition which we got going is the pre-runner. I mean, I think Leah talked about the the 2017 the government got going, but there was 4 years before that we were desperately trying to get some action to address this missing middle issue. So this project's probably what I guess the whole notion of demonstration is we need to demonstrate things that then can be distilled out, that the government and the lawmakers can work the rules around to make sure that other projects achieve a similar sort of outcome. So it'll probably be what can we learn for this? Corner blocks, do we somehow make it that it has to be set up somehow as a joint venture with people who live there? There'll be lots of models where that can come out of this, but to having it as a demonstration, I think is important at this point to realize that we have sort of effectively sterilised the suburbs at the moment. Before 2003, people were allowed to build dual occupancies, and some of them were good, some of them were terrible, and I think that the terrible ones have spoiled the party for everybody else. So this is hopefully an ability or an opportunity to turn a page and do something new and better. And we're sort of both passionate about this in some sort of, you know, me a big picture, and Dan definitely down in the weeds. This is his family, and it's a very personal project for him. So, you know, I think things like corner blocks, you might say, well, okay, these are appropriate for corner blocks over a certain size. That might work, but that'll be for the distillation of, you know, they might at the end of the demonstration review, they might say, well, everybody might say, we're not doing this at all. But if you don't have a chance to show what can be done, nothing will change. And I think we all recognize that we are running out of space in Canberra, and something very significant needs to change in the way we're producing housing at the moment. So I'm not sure how we're going to. Oh, okay. Well, maybe we can do. Oh, sorry, Marianne's question. I waffled on. Sorry. I'll put Dan on to answer the question about the unit title or the strata titling or whatever they're going to do.
Hi, Marianne.
Hi, Dan.
Yes. So what we're proposing here is that we would be able to split the titles, and to be honest, that you know, that's received some backlash on Manor House, for example, because I think people just went, well, why can't you build this and just live like this anyway? You know, we could build a residence on there together, that we could co-live. That's not in conjecture, but the problem is we would need to sell one to be able to make it viable. So we used the rule that if that block was an RZ2, you would be able to have 3 dwellings on it, and you would have most of the same rules. And we've used that rule. So hopefully we can sell the middle one, and then I'll be on one end, and then my parents-in-law will be in the end single dwelling by themselves. So I feel like if we're only selling one, especially, I'm sure most of you understand how the market is at the moment. I'm hoping that we can possibly sell one with a bit of be a bit picky on who we choose, because it is quite close quarters. There's a shared driveway, so it needs to be quite collaborative how we're going to live in that regard. There's some shared amenities like the bins and other things like that, spaces for that. So if we can land on someone that's pretty good, I think it'll be quite a nice little cozy little community in there.
Thank you. Good luck.
Thank you.
So I have another comment here. I mean, anything that happens in Canberra showing what architecture could look like and how sustainable and energy efficient houses could look like is really welcome from my perspective. The big problem is, and I come from probably the highly overpopulated Central Europe, so you will appreciate that I understand about high density living.
Yeah.
But what has been demonstrated here so far in Canberra is utterly unconvincing, both from an architectural point of view and from a point of view how it generates community. One thing that I don't understand is you go to a medieval city in Europe like Salamanca, you have high density living at in a way that creates community that we never seem to be able to replicate.
I think, Jochen, I think part of that might be off the back of that lack of intergenerational living that we have here.
Yeah.
You know, if you think of that medieval model, people are handing down properties that may have been in families for 500 years.
Yeah, but they're also sort of 5-story, and they have communal spaces and
Yes.
plazas and so
Yeah.
on. And so the problem you face, I think, is you enter suburbs, grown suburbs that have grown around single houses, and find it extremely difficult to imagine how that suburb could change into something else that is still livable. At the same time, we have greenfield developments in North Watson and Gungahlin that are absolutely terrible. There is no community inspiring spaces. It's just awful.
Yes. Yeah.
And so the strange thing is, you probably have very sympathetic audience in the old suburbs, but the old suburbs have grown so used to be what they are that they are resistant to change.
Of course.
And we have these new developments that give a fuck about showing what could be. That, I think, is our fundamental problem here in Canberra.
Yeah. The problem that you've got, like coming from a builder's point of view, that often has to go to DA on lots of builds and deal with neighbours' comments and what things have. And I mean, I'm only building single dwellings most of the time, but a lot of them are quite architectural and pushing boundaries and aren't always well received. I think the problem you've got is we've cultivated a planning rule where people know what boxes to tick to get through what they want. So I think you've cultivated it where, you know, for best intentions, you've got a solar envelope rule that might, for best intentions, stop overshadowing on one side of the boundary, but you drive down the street and every house has a second story that's adjusted to one, and it just looks like Stepford, you know. And I think what happens when you have that, it's quite subliminally oppressive. You know, people don't want to engage in their communities. They don't feel like that it's an inviting place to live. They just go home, drive into their driveway or drive into their garage, go into their internal access door and go inside. I mean, I'm sure some other people here might be much more well informed on what you do about that. But I think that's where the model where the developer is someone who's already been embedded in the community, you're going to have a big leg up compared to someone that feels like they've just rolled into town, or the developers just had enough money to buy the block and they're just going to do with it what they want. So I'm hoping that our model can show that to a degree. But I do agree with some of your earlier comments. We've got this scheme running, and it is running on best practice, and everyone that's in the scheme has been through a lot of hurdles to get where they're at, but then that's running in conjunction with what seems to be a do what you want attitude to when you drive around. Like, you know, I drive around O'Connor and if I see a knockdown rebuild, my first instance is to be excited that it might be something quite, you know, that something quite architectural. And then my second reaction is usually a lot of disappointment when I see that it's just a project home builder from Sydney. And it's just going to be just, why did you replace something that had more character than what you're replacing? So it's just, yeah, hopefully we don't fall into that category. Yeah. I'm pretty sure we
will. Well, I foresee a lot of discussions in that respect with the review of the planning review.
Yes.
That's currently happening, and the district plans. But for now, I do appreciate what you're trying to do, and thanks for your presentation. Is there any other question?
Yeah, Joachim, it's Ian Hubbard again.
Ian, hello.
I thought the building and your intentions and the concepts that you were putting forward in that design on that corner block were really exciting and interesting, and captured all the things that people really care about: the sustainability, the keeping of the green space, the love of that tree in the middle, etc. But I think Marion's question was really important about, well, how is the titling going to be done? Because, while you guys might have a real appreciation for space and utility and amenity on the block, the problem is that a lot of builders just want to maximise the usage of the block. And you see, you just see it through Turner and O'Connor, and especially Dixon around Darramarlin at the moment. They build to the 900mm boundary all the way around on blocks in the whole section are done exactly the same way to maximise profit, and you get none of the benefits that you were talking about architecturally. So while it would be lovely, Dan, to give you the ability to say yes or no to all developments on all blocks where you slice up an 800-metre block and turn it into 3 titles, when I look around, you're pretty unique.
I don't disagree with you there.
So that would be the tragedy. So we've really got to be careful that we just don't let the genie out of the bottle and just create complete ugliness in the suburbs and replace all green spaces with the pack-em-in mentality to maximise the profit on a block.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that may be where this demonstration model for RZ1 in particular actually has some stronger credentials, because if you apply the RZ1 rule, you only get a 50% plot ratio. So our 3 units are still meeting under that 50% plot ratio. So we've got an 1176 square metre block, and we're using 500 square metres. Whereas if that was an RZ4 block at 1200 square metres, they would be able to use 1,000 square metres.
Oh, exactly.
So that's
what you see in Dixon at the moment on the RZ3 blocks. They just pack them in.
Yeah.
And, it's a really appalling outcome when you look at people who don't even want to go into their garage and park. But, on a positive note, in Horrell Gardens in Ainslie, there's a family who've got the generations put 2 houses on the one block in Horrell Gardens.
Yes, I know.
And they're living side by side. And they knocked down a monocrete that was on that block. I think it was a 2-beddy monocrete, which was, would perform fantastically in winter. But that's what they've done. But they've done that within the existing rules. And I think that really does show it's really the intention of the owner and the builder, especially the owner, about what the outcome is. Because I think, as Joachim was said, there was no reason why a person couldn't buy that block and put the McMansion on it. And it's really the intention of the owners and their appreciation of life and amenity. But, I just got to emphasise that is not shared by even the majority of people. So, the real bummer is, and you see it on Officer Crescent at the moment, there's some bloody huge houses going up on Officer Crescent. You have big boxes. And how do we get the planning regime to perform that picks up all the ideals that you've got packed into your proposed development or your demonstrator, and that becomes the guiding influence on people so that they don't build and maximise on the block to the detriment of whoever's going to be living in there.
Yeah, I agree. I think
how do we do that?
Well, and again, folks, that's a discussion that is currently raging in the planning review, and that will need to be picked up there. Look, we are running a bit over time. I thank Tony and Dan for their presentation, and I hope we can connect up again if there are more questions in this relationship, in particular concerning the planning review in which we are going to be involved. Tony, are you still there?
We are still here.
Okay.
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you for
that.
your
Yeah.
for your time. I appreciate
Yeah.
it.
Take care.
Okay, bye.